Sandra Birchmore. We've been talking a lot about her, and we will continue to talk a lot about her because this is just a twisted case involving police officer Matthew Farwell, person who was a person of influence, you would think. He was in the Police Explorer program, helping all sorts of kids as they expressed interest in law enforcement. Well, turns out he expressed a lot of interest in Sandra Birchmore, starting at the age of 12, 15, started having sex with her, raping her. And then by 23, she was pregnant with his kid. She died about a few months into that pregnancy. Joining me to discuss, Bob Motta, defense attorney, host of the podcast Defense Diaries. There's a lot that we can dig into here with this. It's hard sometimes to figure out where to start on this because there's so many people that seem to have failed Sandra Birchmore in her life.
Absolutely. It's starting with obviously the police department, because from what I hear, two of her friends let the police department know
Mm-hmm.
he was having sexual relations with a child,
Yeah.
and apparently that got swept under the rug.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole thing is really, to me, going to be a question of who else is getting arrested after he's convicted,
Yeah.
because like you said, this is just such a failure on a massive level, that girl was just left out to dry. And when you talk about, like him being a cop with the Explorers program, it's like any position of power, whether you're a police officer or a teacher or anybody that has power and dominion over a child, and they violate that trust and use their office to do just awful things, commit heinous crimes to benefit themselves. This guy was warped.
What
Like
makes it
this dude's
Yeah.
warped.
And the preying on a child, that's obviously horrible to begin with. Even more so, her parents had recently passed, so this is a kid that's going through the trauma
Everything.
of that. What the hell? What the hell is going through that guy's mind?
He's married with
And
his
he's
own
married.
family.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
dude,
mean,
it's like
yeah.
like you and I cover just the worst of the worst on a daily basis, and it's like the fact that I'm continually shocked
Yeah.
is unbelievable. We've seen it all, right? You
Yeah.
think that we've seen it all. You think that we've heard it all, the atrocity, just the just the warped things that are going on a daily basis in this country. It's like like, was it like this in the 1800s? Were people like
You
back when
know,
they used to ride horses, and like, were people this warped?
I wonder about that, what I wonder about is this: are these things that new to be happening? I don't know the answer to
I
that.
don't know
I feel
either.
like we lived in a society, and not that this was good, but in the past, where a lot of these things were just brushed under the table, and it was like you don't want to deal with this. You don't want to. I mean, I You talk to relatives, you talk to people who've been around for a while, and you can sometimes hear stories of like, yeah, we just kind of we pushed that away, and then they just lived their life and we lived ours. And I think there was a lot more of that going on. So now the fact that we're in a world where we are exposing these sort of things, these people are coming out of a system, for example here, the police department there, where it was just kind of so accepted for so long that we have power and we can get away with some stuff. And I
Right.
think sometimes you assume that, well, we got some power, but nobody's going that far. Because most people may not be going that far. They may be kind of tipping the scales here and there, but nobody's going to go do that. And then when you have that happen, you realize just how out of control the power has gotten, and what else has been covered up over the years. Because I think the list probably goes very, very deep.
Oh, man. Well, look, I've been a criminal defense attorney for 20 years, and I've been dealing with cops that whole time because I'm a criminal defense guy.
Yeah.
So, I'm cross-examining these guys. I'm looking at their reports, and like the first thing that you always have to realize about cops is that they're human beings.
Hmm.
I don't give a shit that they have a
Yeah.
badge and went to a police academy for however many weeks. That
Yeah.
doesn't change who they are fundamentally.
Hmm.
And you're handing these people the the most amount of power that you possibly can in our society.
Hmm.
Like talking about individuals that can change the course of a person's life in the blink of an eye
Hmm.
with almost no recourse,
Yes.
because we lived in a world for so long, which you were just talking about. I grew up with officer friendly.
Yes.
Oh, like if you have to trust the police. The police are the good guys. The police are the ones that are out there protecting and serving. They are our safe harbor. That's the person you can always trust them. We all grew up like that.
Yep.
And I realized as soon as I got into the practice of law that that was all a sham. Like that's just it is. And that
Yeah.
is not to say that they're not amazing cops out there, because there are.
Sure.
There
Sure.
are amazing cops. That is just a thankless, underpaid job
Hmm.
that they are putting their life at risk. I am acutely aware of the risks that they take for not nearly enough money.
Hmm.
And I am incredibly respectful of that and of the good cops that are out there doing that job. But when you have bad ones that slip through the cracks, it is catastrophic. Like, I mean, in this case is like a perfect example of it.
Yeah.
Like the whole staged suicide that he just pushed right through, because of his office, because of his station in life, because of what he does for a living. It wasn't until the feds took a peek,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the feds took a peek, and it's like, this case is obviously intertwined with Karen Reed, because there's players in
Hmm.
law enforcement that there's crossover, that
Yeah.
we've got the very same cop who in this case missed somehow 32,000 text messages between this cop and Sandra.
Hmm.
And I don't know how that happens, but he was the same cop who missed, or maybe didn't miss, the house long to die in court. It's the same cops,
Yeah.
it's the same police office. Police, yeah, it's like it's crazy, man. And it's like it's coming to a head now. Like we're seeing it. We started to see it. Really, it started when I can point to a definitive point in time when things changed, because if you're intellectually honest about our society, that people of color have been abused by law enforcement forever,
Sure.
since the beginning of this country. Like literally, if you look at the history of policing agencies, they were born out of slavery. They really were.
Yeah.
Like, just don't trust me, just go do the research. They like
Sure.
so you just have this situation where you've had generations of people of color, young black men that have lost everything in terms of their lives, as we've incarcerated generations of young black men.
Hmm.
And I started to realize, and you had just people of color just saying, look, they're beating us, they're doing all this horrible shit. And it was just falling on deaf ears until the Rodney King video happened.
Hmm.
The advent of the cell phone that had a camera on it, where citizens could flip their phone open back in those days and start recording what was going on. When things started getting captured on film, there was no denying it anymore.
Hmm.
You couldn't deny what was happening out on these streets.
Yeah.
So that really changed it, in my estimation, in terms of us kind of having an understanding of what goes on with bad cops. And the problem with that profession is that you get one bad apple, it spoils the bunch. Unfortunately, it taints an entire police department. If you have two bad cops in one department, it then causes everybody in the community to no longer trust that police aid. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like it's insidious,
Well,
and
it
it's
is.
like,
And I think it's also one of those things where you look at it and go, in this case, in this department, and I'm sure it's happening in many, many, many more departments, where you got the one bad one, and maybe he was brought in by another bad one. It's like, hey, you want to do a job over here? This will be good for you. You know, and it's just kind of like accepted that there's this, we have this extra power over everybody, and the bar just keeps going because nothing gets questioned here, nothing gets questioned there. You get away with this, you get away with that. There's no accountability. And if you're a really deplorable, horrible human being, there's really not an end to your depravity of where you can go. And I think you start getting that, and then you start getting other people who are also as depraved and like, yeah, I did this and whatever. I don't know how these people talk to each other.
I don't, it's
I can't
insane.
imagine where it's like you're sitting down for a beer and it's like, hey, you know, that 15-year-old or that 12-year-old, like, how the fuck does it even? How do you even talk about shit like this?
I don't know.
However they're doing it, however they communicate in pedo land, um, it happens, and then more find out about it, and it becomes like bees to honey. Like, oh, I could do that job because I can have access to this, and then they just get into that job to have access to those sort of perks, if you
The
will,
power, that
the power
power,
and the perks.
the
Yeah,
ungodly power that they have is
I know.
terrifying,
And
man.
then you have a whole ecosystem that starts working around it. Like in this case, you have the dispatcher who one of the friends called. She's person number 5 in the affidavit. And person 2 is the friend of Birchmore saying, hey, there's something going on here with this officer and a friend of mine who's a child. We should maybe you should look into that, please. And they don't, and that dispatcher, it's not going through their mind of, oh, I should go to HR, or I should go to commander, or somebody who's higher up. No, they take it directly to Farwell and go, hey, we got this call here. What do you think of this? Don't say anything about it. And then she's dead the next month. Uh, so I mean, it just shows that is that dispatcher, you know, an evil human being? Is that dispatcher someone who's out there doing horrible things to kids? No, probably not. But they know how that ecosystem works, and that ecosystem says, just go talk to him about it. You know, we get complaints all the time. You know, and they do. The cops do get complaints all the time, and a lot of them are frivolous. But they're at a point where you can't just ignore things like this, but they have a culture of ignoring things like this. Why? Because there's no repercussions if you don't.
I mean, that's it. I mean, that's like the word is culture. I mean,
Yeah.
that culture of police departments that, I mean, I'm covering this thing with an old Chicago cop, retired, run out of the country because he was a whistleblower of this cop in Chicago, which this story has not like made it out to the world yet, but it's insane. This guy put 57 innocent like innocent men and one woman in prison on murder charges. I don't know if I've told you about
You
this. It's
mentioned
like
it the other day when we were talking
it
off the
blows my
air. Yeah.
mind. It's
Yeah.
like it's like, and it was this Area 5 in Chicago Police
Yeah.
Department. You're talking about the culture of it, and like to go exactly to what you're saying. Like when Bill Dorsch figured out what was going on, when he sees this cop Rinaldo Guevara take one of his CIs, his confidential informants, and he's using him as an eyewitness on a case he's just trying to close, a murder. And the kid's like, points at the wrong picture. The cop turns the book around. He points and he says, "This is the guy you meant, right?" And Dorsch is standing there. Dorsch is like, "What? What just happened?" Like Dorsch is like a legitimately good cop.
Yeah.
So he goes to his superiors, and they're like, "Bill, we just need to close the case. Shut the hell up. What do you care?" And like at that point, moving forward for Dorsch, it was like he was done. Like he's like, I can't be a part of this culture. And he's been advocating. 44 of these people have been exonerated, man. It's like it's an unbelievable story, and
Yeah.
it's probably the worst case of corruption that I've seen in terms of the number. But man, it's like you said, have we finally gotten to the point where it's not going to be ignored anymore? You
I would
know,
hope
I mean,
so.
are we
Yeah.
there? I
Well, I
mean,
mean,
I
I
don't
think
know.
we got to stop using the term bad apple because I think it's more like bad orchards.
Right,
Like there's some bad trees can still produce a couple decent apples.
right.
But these trees need to be cut down and replanted.
Yeah. Right.
And that's what needs to happen in some of these places, especially the departments that just refuse to take any accountability. It seems the attitude is typically, okay, now we're going to act like we really, really care about this because we have to, because there's a spotlight on it. There was a civil case and the feds are involved. Had none of those things happened, nothing would have happened here. He'd still be on the force. Everything would be fine
100%.
and dandy. But because somebody
100%.
finally shone a light on it, oh, We're on this. We're going to take this serious. What else have you not taken seriously? What
Right.
else
I
has
mean,
been bastardized because you wanted to close a case or whatever reason you may have had? Because
yeah.
there's decades of this going back, and we'll never know the truth in some of it. But that's where there is just such corruption in some of these departments. And again, I'm not saying everybody. I have family members who are police. The good ones are good ones, but these departments need to stop just stepping back and saying, "Oh, we'll take care of that. We'll investigate it ourselves. We'll get," because they don't get it corrected. Then it
You
happens again.
can't.
It
Dude, the amount, and it really boils down to this, it's the amount of power that they have individually,
mhm.
and I'm talking about just a regular old beat cop with
Yeah.
that gun and that badge, like I said in the very beginning, can alter a person's life irreparably in the blink of an eye.
Mhm.
And like you have to be able to trust these people. To me, it goes back to the hiring process. It goes to are these every single cop that is put into that position where they're given that enormous
Mhm.
power has to go through just the most rigorous psychological testing available to
Mhm.
us. And I look, I realize we know very little about the human mind. Like that's just facts. We
Mhm.
just don't know. It's like we use 10% of the thing. Like our brain is just sitting up there and we really don't know. Like the psychology and the psychopathy of what goes on in people's minds and what causes them to do evil things or have no remorse or be able like if I tell like a lie, I feel like insanely guilty.
Mhm.
Like that's obviously just built into my DNA.
Sure.
I don't, you know what I mean? And like some people are just broken.
They don't have that. Yeah.
They don't have that. They don't have that capability. So I like
Well,
it's got to go to the hiring process,
well,
man. It's got to start there.
it has to go beyond it too, because it's not once you're past the gate. I mean, you can make it past the gate in the hiring process. A lot of people can. Then it needs to be, I think, more in line with like what the FBI does. Every couple of years, you're being re-examined psychologically to make sure
100%.
you are still up and you are not getting yourself involved. Because if you're in a career where you're surrounded by pretty shady people, and those shady people have an interest in not being caught, and you're over here not making a whole lot of money, it's not
Very
hard
tempting.
sometimes for that to happen, for somebody to
Very
fall victim
tempting.
to it and go, "Oh, yeah, I'll go do your bidding here, and no one's going to be the wiser." This needs
Right.
to be constantly evaluated, whatever it may be, whether it's different tests that are done, whether they do the polygraph every couple of years. They need to examine this shit to make sure that your people are still on the up and up and healthy enough to do that job mentally, because most of that job is mental.
100%. And you're right, because it's always going to start with a cop that decides to go on the take,
Hmm.
right? That they're going to start just because, like we said in the beginning, I mean, it is a grossly underpaid profession
Yeah.
for if you're looking at relative to the risk that they take
Yeah.
in that job. I mean, obviously, urban cops are put in much more danger than a nice
Sure.
country sheriff, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of like these guys, but that's where you see more of the corruption in like the bigger towns and the corrupt areas where it's really easy on a drug bust.
Hmm.
When you're going in and you open a drawer and there's 6 stacks in there to tuck one of the stacks in your vest while your partners are running around in the house
Hmm.
trying to clear it. I mean, it's like, but like once you pass that threshold,
Yeah.
once you make that move, once you violate that trust, I think it becomes easier.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
does. I mean, it's like when you're a little kid, you learn you lie about, stealing a piece of candy, whatever it may be. Like, well,
yeah,
maybe I can make it a little bit, and then it just escalates. And adults are no different, especially when there's
100%.
far higher stakes involved
Yep.
with things like this. And what we're seeing here, which makes it even more disturbing, is there's the insulation. It's again, this is why it's not just a bad apple; it's a bad orchard. You have the accusations against his brother as well, and the other officer who was part of the Explorer program. Those are just allegations right now. They haven't been charged with anything, but I'm gonna guess if there's any legs to that, uh, they better be lawyering up pretty quick, because it's not going to be good for anybody in that circle who had any sort of knowledge of this. And I mean, the fact that this thing went to a civil case first, a lot of people seem to have had knowledge of at least an idea of what was
Right.
going on. It's like R. Kelly. Like we had a video of him having sex with someone with the Soul Train Award in the background, and he still like produced a whole bunch of hits after that. The
It's unbelievable.
information is out there. It's just nobody wants to do anything with it. Nobody
Right.
don't want to get their hands dirty. And
You
that's
gotta you gotta get that one you gotta get that one heroic person that's
no.
willing to, to just put their career and their life at risk. I mean, that's why, like, I talk about this Bill Dorsch guy all the time,
Yeah.
this Chicago cop, but that's exactly what he did.
Mhm.
They ran him out of the entire profession. They
Yeah.
ran him out of the country because he was getting death threats. It was insane.
Yeah.
Like, it was like he whistle blew, and
Yeah.
it was like he was turning bad cops in.
And I think that's the part that a lot of us don't understand on the outside is why would you stand behind somebody like that who clearly is doing these bad acts. Now they've been caught. You're doubling down on this person. Like what this is worth more to you than your own well-being and your family. You'd rather get behind Nutbag over here who's doing horrible shit. Although we do see it every day in our country.
Every day.
Yeah.
And I mean, when you kind of break it down and you start really digging into the concept of it, man, it's like that's a government entity.
Hmm.
And government entities in situations where it's straight corruption, that governmental immunity melts away and they become liable. And people in elected offices are worried about not being elected again. It's like it's so insidious in terms of turning the blind eye. And there's such a huge, huge motive for them to turn a blind eye because so many lives and careers can be ruined if these things are exposed. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a tough thing, and it's like you have cases like this because like everyone was like with Karen Reed, that was like it's insane to think that like well all these cops are doing this shit, and then like stuff like this comes in, like the Karen Reed investigation into the Canton police was born out of the Birchmore case. They're like, all
Exactly.
right, we're looking at the same goddamn police office, and we're good. This department, we're gonna have to dig in. And
Yeah.
there's like these lawyers over here yapping all this shit. We got to look into it at least. So that like now we know what the impetus was. Like everybody on the two battling sides were like, oh, Yannetti had a friend. No, no, they were digging into the Birchmore case, and it's the same police department, and that's why they decided, you know what, we got to take a look at this thing, and they
Mhm.
did,
Yeah.
and they like, I mean, federal oversight, like they just don't have enough people
No.
in the FBI in order to give the oversight that
Well,
we need on every single police department in this country, because again, it boils down to power, man. Like when
yeah.
people get that taste of power,
Yeah.
people just run with it. Like
Yeah.
we are just power hungry sons of bitches in this country, especially, but everywhere worldwide. When you get that taste of power and control and dominion, it's very, very it's intoxicating to people. Like they just find it hard to keep themselves under control in some situations. And I mean, the
You mix a
reality is that
pedophile in
the
with
end
it, and
results,
you get
dude.
this.
I mean, if I'm a serial killer, I'm gonna go apply and become a cop. I mean,
Yeah.
well, like, what better way to fly under the radar?
Yeah.
You can like firsthand skew the evidence. I mean, like, seems like a no brainer to
Yeah.
me. I don't,
Well,
I don't
and
know.
then, well, we have Koberger for that case where
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
a test run that failed miserably. But
Right.
no, this is just it's such a messed up case, and I'm sure we're far from the end of this. This is just the
Yeah,
tip of the
I
iceberg.
think it's scratching the surface.
Hey, thanks for checking out the video. Be sure to follow us wherever you download podcasts, and especially Apple Podcasts, where you can get advanced episode and premium content on our premium channel right there. Also, be sure to follow us on social media so you don't miss any breaking updates on the stories that matter to you most. We're on TikTok, X, Instagram, Facebook. Just search Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Brueski, and you'll find us right there. Again, thanks for watching.